When you're little, the world feels safe. The walls of your home, the warmth of your blanket, the sound of your parents talking in the next room. It all feels like armor against whatever darkness lingers outside. You fall asleep believing nothing bad can reach you, that the monsters you imagine are just stories. But sometimes, the stories are the only thing keeping you from seeing what's really there. There's something strange about childhood, how it blurs the line between imagination and truth. You hear a noise in your closet and tell yourself it's the house settling. You see something move in the corner of your room, but your parents say it's just your eyes playing tricks on you. You want to believe them because believing the alternative means something terrifying, that you're not imagining things, that something is watching. Every adult remembers at least one moment from childhood that still doesn't sit right. A sound, a shadow, a door that creaked open on its own. The kind of memory that feels small at first, until you realize there's no explanation that makes sense. Maybe it was the time you woke up and your toys weren't where you left them. Maybe it was when your parents swore they never came into your room, even though you heard their footsteps. Maybe it was when you told someone about the man you saw outside your window, and they told you to stop making things up. That's the part that stays with you. Not the fear itself, but the silence that follows. The way people don't want to believe you, because if they did, it would mean admitting something far worse. It would mean the world isn't safe, that things do slip through the cracks, and sometimes they find their way to children who can't fight back. And if you think back hard enough, you might remember that feeling. The one that crept over you when the lights went out. You didn't know why, but you'd pull the blanket over your head, too scared to look at the door. Because part of you knew that if you did, you might see something standing there. Something that shouldn't exist, but somehow does. It's easy to laugh it off as imagination when you're grown. You tell yourself you were just a scared kid. But what if you weren't wrong? What if for a moment you saw the truth? Something adults have trained themselves not to see. Children notice things because they haven't learned to ignore them yet. They haven't learned to convince themselves that everything's fine. So when you hear a child say they saw someone in their room, or that they hear someone whispering their name at night, maybe listen. Because the things that haunt children don't always go away when they grow up. Sometimes they just wait quietly for someone else to notice them again. It starts slow, almost too slow. Like the quiet before you realize something's wrong. The air feels heavier than it should. The silence stretches out long enough for your heartbeat to sound louder than your thoughts. That's how fear really works, not with screams, not with chaos, but with quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. You notice the small things first. The way a floorboard creaks when no one's walking, the faint hum of electricity in the walls, the clock ticking, steady, unbothered, as if time doesn't care that you're starting to feel uneasy. You tell yourself it's nothing. You always do. But somewhere deep down, your body already knows what your mind refuses to accept. Something is off. Something is watching. When you listen to stories like these, you don't rush them. You let the silence do the work. Every pause, every breath, every flicker of doubt builds something inside you. Tension, anticipation, dread. You start leaning in without realizing it because you want to hear what happens next, even though every part of you is screaming that you don't. That's the thing about real horror. It doesn't need to chase you. It waits for you to come closer. The pacing of fear, deliberate. It mimics the rhythm of the human heart. It starts steady, then skips a beat when something unexpected happens. A door shutting, a whisper, a sudden chill. Then it slows again, letting you think it's over, letting you breathe. But it's not mercy, it's a trap. Because when fear lets you breathe, it's only so it can take that breath away again. You can hear it even now, can't you? That slow unraveling, that creeping unease that crawls up your spine. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to. The longer it waits, the stronger it gets. The longer it's quiet, the louder your thoughts become, until finally, you start to imagine things. You start to see shapes in the dark corners of your room. You start to wonder if the shadows have been moving while you weren't looking. And that's when the pacing changes. Just a little. The story picks up, your heart beats faster, and every word feels heavier. You want it to end, but you don't want to miss what comes next. That's the trick. Fear makes you its own accomplice. It makes you participate in your own unraveling, then silence again. Because true terror never ends with noise. It ends in stillness. The kind where you can hear yourself breathing, and you wish you couldn't. The kind that makes you realize you're afraid to turn your head, afraid to check behind you. Because what if, after all this time, there really is something there? The pacing isn't just in the story, it's in you. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. When you look back on your childhood, you realize something important. Fear isn't always about monsters or ghosts. It's about uncertainty. It's about not knowing what's around the corner and learning too late that not everything you trust is as solid as it seems. Life, much like investing, teaches you that the world rewards awareness and punishes naivety. When I hear stories of fear, especially the kind that stays with people for years, I don't think about the supernatural first. I think about behavior, incentives, patterns. There's always a reason behind what people do, even the things that seem irrational or evil. But when you're a child, you don't see those reasons. You just see outcomes. You see someone you trusted, acting in a way that doesn't fit your picture of safety. You see a place that was once comforting suddenly turn unfamiliar. That's the kind of fear that builds character and scars. You see, when we grow up, we develop what I like to call emotional compounding. Every experience, every shock, every betrayal, it builds on top of the last one. A small lie from a parent might not seem like much. A strange experience in an empty hallway might not register at the time, but those things stay with you, collecting interest. One day, when you're older, you'll realize those memories shape the way you judge risk, trust, and danger. People like to think horror is about what happens to you. I think it's more about what it teaches you. Every frightening experience gives you a return on awareness. It teaches you to pay attention to people, to places, to instincts. When a child feels something's wrong, that's not superstition, that's data. The problem is, most adults ignore it. They write it off the same way investors ignore early warning signs before a crash. Then they look back and say, we should have seen it coming. And isn't that how most tragedies work? You get small warnings, subtle, quiet, easy to overlook, a neighbor acting odd, a sound you can't explain, a gut feeling you dismiss because logic tells you it's silly. But logic doesn't always save you. Awareness does. If I've learned anything in my life, it's that real danger doesn't announce itself. It hides behind charm, comfort, and familiarity, just like bad investments do. It waits until your guard is down, until you stop checking the fine print, until you believe you're untouchable. Then it moves, and when it does, you remember that feeling from childhood, that cold realization that everything good stays good forever. That safety can disappear in a moment. So when I think about fear, I don't see it as something to avoid, I see it as something to learn from. Because whether it's money, people, or the dark, the truth is always the same. Those who pay attention early sleep better later. There's something heavy about the kind of fear that starts in childhood and never really leaves you. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase you. It just sits quietly in the back of your mind, waiting for the right sound, the right silence, the right memory to wake it up again. You learn to live with it. You grow up, move on, start telling yourself it was all in your head. But deep down, a part of you still remembers. And that part never really grows up. The emotional weight of those moments isn't in what happened. It's in what it did to you. It's in the way your body still reacts to the dark, how your breath still catches when the house creaks at night. You know it's nothing. You tell yourself that every time. But your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. It remembers that one night you stayed awake too long, watching shadows move across your wall. It remembers the voice that whispered your name when no one was home. It remembers the sound of footsteps stopping just outside your door. And that's what makes these stories linger. They don't just scare you, they reach into places that never healed properly. You realize fear isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides in memories you've told yourself aren't important. A faint smell, a quiet hum, the way a door slowly opens without a sound. Those tiny forgotten details, that's where the real terror lives. There's sadness in that realization too. Because every child who's ever been afraid learns something the rest of us spend years trying to unlearn. That safety is temporary. That comfort can be broken. That someone you love can stand right next to you and still not see what's coming. You learn early that sometimes no one hears you when you call out. Sometimes the darkness answers instead. And when you grow older, it changes how you see the world. You notice people's eyes before their words. You keep your back to the wall in crowded places. You double-check the locks even when you know they're fine. It's not paranoia, it's survival. It's what happens when fear teaches you too much too soon. But there's something almost beautiful in that too, in knowing you survived what scared you. You carry the fear, yes, but you also carry the proof that you made it through. The trembling hands, the racing heartbeat, the sleepless nights, they all become reminders that you were there and you're still here. Still, when the night gets quiet and the world feels a little too still, that same question returns. The one that kept you awake when you were young. What if the thing that scared you back then never really left? It always ends the same way. Not with a scream, not with a bang, but with silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring, like the world itself is holding its breath. After the story ends, after the lights come back on, you tell yourself it's over. You try to believe that the fear belongs only to the past. But deep down, you know better. Fear doesn't vanish. It lingers, it hides in the corners of the room, in the places your eyes skip over without realizing. It waits for the right moment to remind you it's still there. There's a strange stillness that comes after fear, like standing in the eye of a storm. You feel calm, but it's fragile. One wrong thought, one wrong sound, and it all collapses again. You start thinking about the stories you've heard, about the people they happened to, and you wonder how they went on living afterward. How do you sit in the same room, sleep in the same bed, walk down the same hallway, knowing what's been there? Knowing what you've seen can't be unseen. Maybe that's the real horror. Not the events themselves, but the aftermath, the quiet that follows, the way life pretends to go back to normal, even though you know it's not. You'll laugh again, work again, live again. But then one night, you'll hear something. A soft tap at the window, a door creak in the hallway, a whisper that sounds too close. And just like that, it's back. That reminder that you're never really alone, that the world you see isn't the only one that exists. What makes the unease so lasting is that it's honest. These stories don't promise justice or resolution. They don't end with the villain caught or the mystery explained, because that's not how life works. Some things happen, and no one ever finds out why. Some people disappear, and no one ever sees them again. Some nights end with questions that echo for years, and the worst part, you learn to live with it. You begin to realize that fear becomes a kind of shadow. Always behind you, always the same size. No matter how bright the light gets, you can pretend it's not there, but the moment you turn around, it's waiting, watching, still. And as the story fades, as the last word leaves your mouth, you can almost feel the air shift. You remind yourself it's just a story, that you're safe, that it's all over. But your heart doesn't believe you, because fear doesn't end with the story. It begins there. It follows you into the quiet moments, into the spaces between your thoughts. So before you turn out the lights tonight, take one last look around your room. Notice what's there and what might not be. Because sometimes, the ending isn't really an ending. It's just the beginning of your own story, the one that starts the moment the screen goes dark.